Sound check. Test, test. Okay, levels are good. On 3, 2. All right, today is the day, and as you can tell, we have upped our game in the sound department with some new, good, clear audio with our new sound man here, making sure things work much better. A little story at the end of this video telling you how this new sound thing came about, kind of a funny story. Anyway, today we're just going to do a little shop tour, cover a couple of different things that have been going on, kind of a here and there, hit and miss. But anyway, let's go take a look at it. If you remember in a previous video, I bent a couple of stainless steel tubes that are running from the front to the back, going to supply coolant to the front mounted radiator. Well, I just went ahead and laminated those tubes in place to keep them from moving and added, of course, to our rigidity through here. You can do this with the epoxy, but not with the polyester resin. Those coolant tubes, the heat going through there would soften up the resin in a polyester laminate, so epoxy, that's fine. Once I got those tubes laminated in, I'm ready to move on to create a stiffener. Now these little horizontal stiffeners are going to run through these door sills, using again that same 1-inch foam, cutting out the shape I need. These stiffeners are going to be added to the strength of the whole structure. And you'll see here that they taper up in the end, and that's particular to the way we're going to lay these continuous strand laminates, these fiber tapes, this unidirectional fiber tapes. A trial fit on that foam. Now I know that everything's going to fit. It's going to fit right up against that tube for those coolant lines. But I'm going to build up about 12 layers on this one piece of foam, 6 layers on each side of this unidirectional tape. So that's going to be 6 layers each side, and you'll notice that these tapes run narrow through the center, and then they're going to spread out and follow the contour of that foam, which kind of kicks up at the front at the beginning. You'll also notice that the fibers go beyond the foam core. And that is due to the fact that we're going to use those to attach this whole thing to the front and rear bulkheads. So just laminating this on the bench, getting the fibers thoroughly saturated. You'll see I got the traditional polyethylene plastic down on the bench. Once it's all laminated, I can use that polyethylene sheet to transport the whole thing. Again, here you can see that I am keeping those fibers together and then spreading out as they come to those contoured ends. You can take it off the bench, bring it over and place it into the tub. First off, you'll see here I've got a little fulcrum underneath the tub here, and I'm putting about 60 pounds on each side of the tub. Kind of put a little pre-stress into it, just to make sure I don't get a warp in the wrong direction. Add a little strength that way with that pre-stress. And like I said, that polyethylene helps me keep things together as I bring it over. Even though I got the polyethylene on, let's see it's delaminating, kind of falling off of the foam there. That's okay. The next process is getting it all back into place. Now these unidirectional tapes are kind of rough. They're just a little coarser material. And so I'm laminating right over the top of those with some finer fiberglass just to get a nice smooth surface. That smooth surface be the next work surface of the next step. So laminate right over the top of it, get it nice and smooth. I'll be able to sand that surface for the next bond, the next layer on the next step. Now that we have this horizontal stiffener into the floorboards, we will be building it up a little bit more, but between the conduit and the coolant line traveling through this one that's been laminated over, this one with all of the unidirectional fibers on both sides, and those unidirectional fibers travel up and then they spread out onto the bulkhead here. We will be next filling in this whole area with foam, and that'll be all contoured and shaped to create the seal for the door as the door comes down against it. So once that foam is all filled in here, and it'll also be reinforced with many unidirectional fibers, and those unidirectional fibers are going to come up and tie into this area after it's trimmed. But this little notch here, and I'll pan over to that side, on the opposite side there, this is the recess where the bolting for the front subframe is going to take place. So these notches will actually be completely filled with that unidirectional fiber, but it's going to come out and then down and tie all the way through that same piece we have already created. So those unidirectional fibers will tie from these two notches. The fibers will come down, travel down, and through our door sills. All those unidirectional fibers are traveling down here and spreading out onto the bulkhead as well. We'll be adding some more of those, filling this in. And those unidirectional fibers, they will travel out, and in the end, they will also cross into this piece. That's why I keep saying vertical laminate, because we have this vertical post that's going to be created here. That is going to be basically the roll structure. It also is the connection for our rear subframe. This little notch here, when it comes out and gets laminated in, this is the area where the rear subframe bolts in. Also, this little notch in the floor, there's also 2 bolts that go through, little L bracket for the bottom of the subframe. So this vertical piece here that we're going to use, we're just going to call it our roll bar for now. It will be created by using that unidirectional fibers. I'll build up like 10 layers, and then a layer of fiberglass will come across it and then tie into the bulkhead. Then we'll put 10 more layers on, and then another piece of fiberglass that comes across and ties it again, each one proceeding. The next will be larger and larger, and that'll keep spreading the strength of that laminated roll bar across the way to the bulkhead. And of course, when they're all tied together too, that'll hold the subframe. So between these door sills and the center tunnel, which of course will take the bulk of the strength of the tub, we should have enough stiffness to keep this thing from twisting and to keep it from having any kind of flex between the 2 subframes. Okay, I have come into the possession of an old restaurant fryer that we are converting to be a wax pot. It used to be, I'll try to come around here and show you, it used to be a propane powered thing that propane burners fired through these tubes. We are converting it now to run on electric. I'll show you the heat strips on the side back in there, but they will come up and feed through just using a PID controller. Running some SSRs, pretty simple setup. This will give me a whole lot more volume. I've just been using a little hot plate with a little bowl on it to do some small things, but I need to get ready to pour some larger things, maybe get it back into some sculpture and do some bronze there. But that, I've jumped back into that because I really need that done, because we are getting ready to pour. We have these PLA 3D printed parts ready to go for my 5-axis CNC machine. So need to get those done. Also have a couple of parts for the suspension, the rocker arms for the push rods. They will be a sand cast, but getting ready to do a pour, so I need to get that wax going as well. So I'm gonna just show you this real quick. This is a molding machine that I've been building. Hate to be showing you things I'm going to do rather than what I've got done. My sand has been sitting way too long. Keep it in these bins. They don't seal completely tight, even though the oil-based Petrobond stays a lot better than pure water-based sands. They need to be remolded. Get ready for those, like I said, rocker arms, full front suspension. But that's a real quick rundown, just kind of showing you what goes on in my life. And next to that molding machine, these little seats for a dune buggy. My son's storing them in here. Seems to be one of the curses of my life. Always moving things, trying to find space to get back to work. When people find the space, they like to store things in it. But anyway, hopefully this week I'll be putting the molding machine together. Got all the parts here, but need to get that done. Like I said, those rocker arms for those push rods in the front suspension, that'll be part of that. If you happen to have seen this video, you'll know that I'm trying to redo this exhaust system, build that manifold back there. But as always, a couple of interruptions. One of those little things, my wife wants to build a little booth seating for a little apartment we have above the shop. And so we built these little bench seating arrangements, got them in here. We're gonna do some filling and sanding and get them painted up, but that took a little bit of my time. Just one of those things. We're looking at some water jet cut parts right here that are part of a little conversation I want to have. Now, part of my being here at YouTube is to kind of share information, and hopefully that information can go back and forth. Now, yesterday I happened to be able to listen to a podcast that was produced by a couple of subscribers to the channel here. And we've all come to know each other just a little bit and getting to know each other better because of the association through YouTube. Now, in particular, I'm talking about Brian House, who has a YouTube channel called Housework. And that, if you're going to look for it, YouTube/house/work. And I think if you just search Housework, he might come up in there. But he is a fabricator as well and produces a 72-inch belt grinder, and a lot of his focus is on perfecting that machine and other things that he does. But he has decided to open up and create a podcast, and that podcast is called Work For It. I'll put a link into their first episode, and in that first episode, he and the other subscriber, Trent Hill, were discussing adapting his belt grinder to some different fabrication techniques. And they mentioned slot and tab construction. And I use that a lot on the parts I do. I always use it in water jet cut parts because plasma cutting, which Brian is doing, takes a lot of setup. And I suppose if you're going to get into a production method and you can get that perfected, that would work fine. The only thing that I will mention about a water jet cutting is this is a piece off of our anti-sway system, and these holes have been cut ready to be tapped. And if you do that with a plasma cutter, the plasma hardens the surface around there and the tap just doesn't quite work right. So you could, with a plasma cutter, just pierce it and then re-drill them, but then that drill will tend to want to wander where the jet also wandered a little bit as it was piercing. So with water jet, you can actually go straight to tapping from the size of the holes. And this is all based upon whether you have a good water jet cutter that can get the tolerances you want. And they can tweak it and get tolerances tighter and tighter just by adjusting where the cut runs on the path. So here's, this is going to be the hub. Hopefully we'll be getting to that in the near future to build that. But this is just going to show you, I guess this is one of the downfalls of water jet cutting is this superficial rust all over the place, depending on what kind of metal you're using. But here are some parts that have the tabs and the slots, and they fit nicely in there. This piece will go here, and there's some other pieces. I'm just showing you this as an example. But the tolerances can be controlled so nicely that these pieces, they just do not move once you get them slotted into there. In fact, some pieces, we got this piece that'll be dropping into this existing piece of pipe. And I hope you can see close enough that that fits very nicely. But I have adjusted some of these little tabs that are going to go into these holes. But they align everything up. Like I said, I use that for a lot of things that I'm doing. Here's one of the little stepper motor mounts. It had the tabs and the slots right in here. And once that's welded together, that's going to go onto the machine with some more, of course, slots and tabs. These are the brackets for the exhaust manifold. Instead of using real heavy gauge to keep it from warping, I just stay with the 1/4" stainless steel and then just build these trusses. And if you can see, the little tab going in there, welded on the back side, another tab into slots on the ends. And like I said, those trusses, enough to keep that from warping while I build the truss. Got a little mounting hole to actually hang some of the insulation off of. Like I said, it's all a matter of drawing your clearances in. That manifold's gonna go in there. This one a little bit looser because I wanna be able to get a little bit of an angle start on the way out if I need to, as I'm building that manifold. Anyway, like I said, that is the system of slot and notch. Works great for me. I like it. I certainly, I will grab one. This does not use any notches, but of course the water jet cut parts, and I'm not afraid to use tubes as well. They certainly serve their purpose. A combination of things is always what seems to work. Well, there you go. Like I said, just a little bit of a jump around the shop, little things going on here and there. As I told you in the beginning of this video, I was going to tell you a little story. When I first started shooting video out here in the shop, I bought this nice little shotgun microphone, thought this was the answer, but found out that it picked up a lot of echo. Of course, there's lots of hard surfaces all over the shop here, so that has been a problem. So what I did is I went to a wireless lavalier microphone, and that seemed to be better. No echo there, or at least very little. Just volume wasn't good, so I would just crank those up a little bit in post-production and editing the videos. And still had a few complaints about audio. So the other day I decided that it was time to order up some new lavalier microphones, and I got these nice little Rode, they're called Rode Goes. They're a little tiny portable set, and thought this was going to be the answer. And when I went to try it for my first time, plugged it into the camera and started talking when I was behind the camera, and then walked around, stood in front of the camera about the same distance here to see what it would get. And on playback, I found that the audio was much better when I was behind the microphone, and thought maybe it was just a proximity thing. So tried it again, still would get the same results. So I switched back to my old microphone and just happened to do the same test, standing behind the camera, making some comments, doing the old test thing, and then walked back around here to the front and noticed that my audio quality again was much better from the back. And then the sudden realization hit me. I have always been picking up the audio only from the camera. The lavalier microphones have not worked, and the last 40 videos have been shot with just the camera audio going. So the decision was made to figure out what the problem was, and I quickly discovered that the cameras, I'm using a Galaxy phone, an old 9, now I'm using a 10 Plus. They both require the adapter to be a TSRR rather than just a TSR. Adding that one little segment is what the camera wanted to kick in the audio. So now, hopefully things will be much clearer. You won't just hear me mumbling in the background. You'll hear me mumbling right up close, right into the new microphones. So hopefully the audio quality is much better. Also pushing everything we can to make things better as you go. That's one of the things with experience, I think. Anyway, hope you like this video, and come back and see the new audio quality on the next. Anyway, thanks for stopping by. Come back and see us again.